Not any tale, but a very important one has died. The great musician Sly Stone, who changed the sound of funk, soul, and rock, has died at the age of 82. But here is something that no one is telling you. The funeral wasn't like any other, and what some famous people said will leave you speechless. There were emotional breaks, hidden messages, and a tribute that shook the music business to its core. You won't believe who didn't show up and why if you don't wait. This is more than just a birthday present. It's a deep look into the real life of one of the most important figures in music history. Sly Stone was more than just the face of rock, he was the heart of a stir. But now that the world has lost a pioneer who changed music forever, secrets are coming to light, questions are being raised, and the honors are showing a lot more than anyone thought. You are about to find out what really happened in his last days. What happened at the funeral that no one saw coming, and the strange silence of some of the biggest stars in music whose careers were helped by Sly, politics in the business, or was there something more going on? The funeral service had its ups and downs, but will also tell you the shocking truth about Sly's last years spent alone, and his family's legal fight over his music rights and royalties, which started before he died. And believe me, you won't want to miss what Prince's estate, Questlove and Lenny Kravitz said after he died. Not only were their tributes respectful, but you could feel the guilt, sorrow, and coded messages in them through the screen. Now is the time to relax and get ready for one of the most moving, shocking, and honest stories in the history of music. This is the real story of how Sly Stone died, and the impact they tried to hide with him. Sly Stone was untouchable for decades, riding on the high of his worldwide fame, platinum songs, and a legacy that changed the course of music history. But in his last years that attention went away, and what went on behind closed doors in the last few months of his life was a surprise even to his biggest fans. Sly Stone was born Sylvester Stewart. His hits in the 1960s and 1970s, like Everyday People and Family Affair, showed how smart he was. But after the fame and money, there were years of court cases, drug abuse, and being alone. And by the time he was 75, the funk legend who played Woodstock was broke, sick, and almost forgotten. He was living in a van in Los Angeles. You did hear that right. One of the most sampled and important singers of all time, Sly Stone, was homeless for years and had to live off of royalties that were either mishandled or stolen. Even the court case he won against a former boss in 2015 and got $5 million for didn't give people the comfort they were hoping for. The truth, a lot of that money was never seen by him. The decision that was supposed to bring justice was ruined by legal problems, appeals, and shady contracts. Insiders say Sly has become more and more private in the last few months. He was weak and easily hurt because of his health problems, which included long-term breathing problems and rumors of Parkinson's signs. Not many people were allowed to come to his room. An old friend said that Sly was tired. He knew in his heart and in his body that the end was near. But this is where things start to feel strange. Several people say that he was working on a will just a few weeks before he died. This will could change the distribution of millions of dollars in music earnings. People close to the family said there were arguments about how much power his daughter Novena Carmel should have over the estate. No one openly admitted to having a fight, but some people at his funeral reportedly wouldn't talk to each other. A sign that there are unsolved problems simmering just below the surface. Even though his health was getting worse, Sly had one last wish. He asked for a quiet farewell. People who knew him well say that he asked very specifically that there not be a big public funeral until things calmed down. But what happened at the funeral was the opposite of what he asked for. After that, the story goes in a strange and sad direction. Fans all over the world were sad when they heard that Sly Stone had died at the age of 82. But people who were lucky or brave enough to go to his private funeral in Los Angeles saw something they didn't expect. It wasn't just a celebration of life, it was a mix of pain, praise, and quiet anger. A small church in Inglewood was used for the service, which was only open to people who were invited. There were only a few dozen guests, family members, longtime partners, and artists whose lives were touched by Sly's music. There was no live stream or access to the media. The room was so tense that it was hard to ignore, even though there weren't many people there. As a nod to Sly's lively stage image, the flower arrangement was a psychedelic explosion of color. His well-known white fur coat was placed over his closed coffin, and music filled the air. If You Want Me to Stay and Thank You Folletin Mabimus Elf Agent played live by a band of carefully chosen players, including a few Stone family members who are still alive, but this is where the mood changed. In the middle of the ceremony, funk and soul great George Clinton showed up out of the blue, shocking everyone in the room. Clinton took the stage in full regalia, took off his glasses, and gave an honest, spontaneous tribute that included a few jabs at the industry that ignored Sly during his worst times. He made you all sound. He gave you life. But where were you when he needed you? Clinton said with his finger on the chapel's back. At the funeral, don't act like you just got married. It was a strong message. There were claps and blank looks. It was clear that not everyone in that room had good motives. People who were there say that one member of Sly's family left during Clinton's speech. Some people just stared, as if they were afraid to face their own shame. Lenny Kravitz then took the stage with tears in his eyes. He has long said that Sly was one of his biggest inspirations. Instead of giving a speech, he sat down at the piano and played a simplified version of Family Affair. Not a band or backup singers, just the singer's own voice and feeling. He whispered "Thank you, Sly" as he sang the last note. Your lessons are still useful to us all. Even Questlove, who wasn't there in person, made his presence known. His pre-recorded tribute was shown on a screen, and he said something shocking. Just 2 years before he died, Sly had secretly recorded music that had not been released yet. Questlove made it sound like he had some of it and that it might come out when the time is right. But Novena Carmel, Sly's daughter, tried to read a letter he wrote before he died. That may have been the saddest moment. She couldn't finish because she was so moved by the words. A friend of Sly's for a long time took over and read his last words out loud. If not about music or leaving a memory, then what is the message? I'm sorry to everyone I hurt or loved. The music was always meant to help, not hurt. Keep them from arguing about my name. Do nothing but dance. Even with the raw emotion and historic honors, fans noticed right away that some people were missing. Some artists like Bruno Mars, who has said many times that Sly Stone was an important impact on him, didn't show up or say anything. Larry Graham, Sly's old bandmate, also didn't. He had a loud, long-lasting fight with this person. That quiet made people wonder, was this about beef that hadn't been settled, or was there something else that kept them away? Then there were rumors that some powerful people in the business skipped the service on purpose because they were going to be sued over Sly's catalog. Something we'll talk about soon. But the tension in the room showed that there were deeper problems in the business. Sly helped build, not just in his close friends and family. How does someone who used to be friends with jazz greats like Jimi Hendrix, James Brown, and Aretha Franklin just vanish? Sly Stone really did not go away. He was pushed out of the business world by people who cheered for his rise but turned their backs on him when he fell. It breaks my heart, irritates me, and most of all it reveals what happened in those lost decades. It was a long, painful fall for Sly Stone after he topped the charts in the late 1960s and early 1970s. By the late 1970s, stories of bad behavior, missed performances, and heavy drug use were all over the news. In the past, this man brought together people of all races, ages, and backgrounds. Now not even his own friends could figure him out. An insider said that while Sly was on tour in 1975, he would often lock himself in hotel rooms with instruments, notebooks, and tape players for days at a time, refusing to act until he was left alone for a full hour. They said he wasn't being hard to deal with. Things were getting darker around him as he fought demons and tried to keep the music clean. Record companies got impatient, and marketers pulled out of deals, so Sly stopped making money. By the early 1980s, it was almost impossible to find him. There were rumors. Some said he went to Northern California to live without power or water. Others said he was in a hospital. The truth was more sad and complicated than that. Sly moved from temporary home to temporary home for years, staying with family and friends and mostly by himself. He became really hooked on crack cocaine, which he would later say in a few appearances. His paranoia got worse. People who knew him well say he became scared of being watched or taped. He thought that someone was listening in on his phone, reading his mail, and taking his ideas. Author and director William Ruhlman found him in Los Angeles in 2009. He was shocked by what he found. In Crenshaw, Sly Stone was living in a white camping van parked behind a house. He had almost no money for food or medicine. Sly claimed that he was still making things, even though the conditions were bad. He showed Ruhlman a huge number of notebooks, demo tapes, and even records that were made for fun with just an old keyboard and a portable mixer. "I'm not done yet," Sly told him. "They buried the stage me, but I'm still cooking as the real me." That conversation made a few people in the business world angry. The news outlets that wrote about his living situation were shocked and outraged, which made people worried and embarrassed the business. But instead of getting help right away, Sly got caught up in a web of cases. One was against Jerry Goldstein, Sly's former manager, because he claimed Goldstein stole millions of dollars in royalties from Sly. Sly won a $5 million case in 2015, but as we already said, he never got the whole amount. Claims and counterclaims in court kept the money stuck. At the same time, Sly's health kept getting worse, and fewer people knew about him. Even so, there were sparks of light in the dark. He made a small comeback album called I'm Back, Family and Friends in 2011. It had songs with other singers like Bootsy Collins and Jeff Beck. It didn't do well at the box office, but it did prove one thing. Sly Stone hadn't lost his style, just his stage. There's also evidence that Sly was working on another project, an unfinished autobiographical concept album called The Myth of Me. Insiders say it has spoken word confessions, unreleased funk instrumentals, and brutally honest thoughts about race, fame, and regret. The tapes are real, but no one knows where they are right now. That being said, how could such a brilliant person get lost? Not only addiction is the problem, but also abuse, bad management, and the music business's all too familiar habit of getting rid of black artists when their popularity drops. Even though Sly Stone is no longer alive, the fight over his reputation is getting worse. A silent fight is also going on behind the scenes, involving lawyers, tech executives, old friends, and even family. What's at risk? The right to own one of the most important music collections in American history, and the chance to make millions of dollars in fees in the future. To be clear, Sly Stone wasn't just a singer, he was a creator of music. He left his mark on hip-hop, R&B, dance and pop music today. His sound has been used or sampled by artists like Prince and Kendrick Lamar. This makes Sly's catalog not only important, but also a goldmine. But there's a catch. Before he died, Sly didn't own a lot of his own songs. Sly slowly lost control of his writing rights over the years because of bad contracts, bad management, and drug use. A lot of Sly's early work with Epic Records, like the hits Dance to the Music and Everyday People, was signed away in the 1970s, when he was using drugs a lot and was very suspicious of people. Legal documents say he signed deals without reading them, and often put his trust in managers or lawyers who did not have his best interests at heart. Jerry Goldstein, who used to be Sly's boss, is one of the most controversial people in this story. Goldstein is accused of changing the terms of contracts that gave him a lot of Sly's master recordings and licensing rights. In 2010, Sly finally sued him and won a $5 million ruling in 2015, but that money was stuck because of appeals and legal tactics, and Sly died before he ever saw a dime. At the same time, Sly's work is still making companies like Sony Music Publishing and BMI millions of dollars every year. Sources close to the situation say that several streaming services are secretly talking about buying or licensing the rest of his music. Who is the most active player? Apple Music is said to. A letter from the business world that got out says that Apple has been talking to people from the Sly Stone estate since early 2024. The plan, to get the rights to material that hasn't been released yet and make a docu-series for Apple TV+. They did the same thing with the Beatles and Selena. The public hasn't seen any official announcement, but people close to the estate say the deal is in the high eight-figure range. But here's the catch. Not all of Sly's family likes this deal. Many people say that Novena Carmel, Sly's daughter, has legal control over some parts of his estate. She wants to go the independent way. In a podcast earlier this year, she talked about how important it is to keep her father's idea alive. He was a prophet. His music was sacred, and I'm not going to sell that to anyone who will pay the most. But cousins and old co-workers and other family members have a different opinion. Some people say that the book should be sold while there is a lot of interest, so that the family can get money and Sly's name is remembered by many people. A family friend who did not want to be named said that people are fighting for power right now, and they weren't even there when Sly lived in the van. Where were they at that time? Also, don't forget, it's possible that there is a whole vault of Sneaky Stone music that has never been heard. Some of it was taped back in the 1980s. It is said that other songs were made with big names like Dr. Dre, Erykah Badu, and even Andre 3000. Yes, sends Andre out. It's still not clear if these tapes exist or are stuck in legal limbo. If they're real though, their value could go through the roof. This is where things get even less clear.